Alright, science fiction, science fact, video number 18. Um, this is on Wolverine's skeleton and his claws. Now, I was watching a couple of videos from Nerdist on Wolverine's claws and the issues with length and stuff from the movies and the comic books, and that was something that always stuck with me whenever I'd read it, and I'd see different people's aspects on the claws and how they were longer than the forearm, which is impossible. Because if, like in the 2000 X 19 or the year 2000 movie of X-Men, where they show an X-ray of Wolverine's skeleton and the claws are actually in the back of his hand through the wrist, he wouldn't be able to bend his wrist in any direction. And if you pulled them directly back into so the claws were in the forearm, then they would be up into his bicep area where he wouldn't be able to bend his elbow. Now, the very first measurements I ever saw for Wolverine's claws came on the back of those little player cards, trading cards, that you used to get for like baseball and things like that, the football cards and things like that, when Marvel was doing those back in the 80s and 90s. And it said Wolverine's claws were 17.9 inches long, which is impossible for a guy who's only 5'3" to 5'5", depending on who did the comic. Now, I am actually 5 feet 5 inches tall. My forearms are only 11 inches long, which means the claws would only be able to be 9.5 inches long at best. Why? Because your wrist bones are put together where your ulna and radius touch to make your wrist. They are put together, which doesn't have any room for your claws to sit past. They would be sitting either at the very back, just barely above the bone, so when they are extracted, they'd come out to the back of the hand, like shown in the comic books. However, if you space the wrist, it's painful to use your hand with a dislocated wrist. Your gripping strength and punching power is severely screwed up and gone. So, you gotta work out things like that with Wolverine, but based on the movie in 2000, when he extracted his claws, the wrist bones separated, and the claws came straight through and then out between the fingers instead of the back of the hand. Went straight through the hand. Now, with that drives me nuts because, let's face it, it's going to need something to be held into place with, or it's going to tear through your hand when you're climbing up things or scratching at things like the big metal door when it escapes the weapon prime program in Canada. Attacking helicopters or Humvees like in the Wolverine and X-Men Origins. It's got issues with how they put it together because they didn't think it through. They were like, oh, well, it's science fiction, let's just do it like this, they'll believe it. But people like me, we tend to pick up on that thing and we gnaw at it with our thoughts. We're like, no, it wouldn't work that way, you'd hurt yourself, you'd rip them out of your body, and you've got a lot of issues. So, one of the things the little playing card also said is that it was rooted to the skeleton with adamantium. They didn't mention that the claws originally were bone. They just said it was adamantium claws rooted to the skeleton. They show a small metal piece with the knuckle covers, or protectors, or guards, whatever you want to call them, that sat between the fingers on the back of the hand, where the claws would actually come out. Those were bolted to the back of the hand at the metatarsal portion of the fingers, of the phalanges, with a titanium plate. And the claws would pop out through those. There were silicone tubes put in there to keep the claws going through the same spot each time. The muscles were said to have been rearranged to compensate for the claws, but Marvel was more like, after a few years, like, oh, let's make these bones since it's rooted to the skeleton. And then you first learn about that in Marvel Comics issues where Magneto rips the adamantium from Wolverine's body. And when he pops his claws for the first time, you find out that they're bone. And Xavier explains, oh, well, that makes sense since the adamantium was rooted to the skeleton. Anyway, so, here is our Wolverine. And yes, I draw these myself. So, our 5'3" superhero weighing 195 pounds according to the back of the trading cards. He originally was 175, with the adamantium put in because of his height, 195, a whole 20 pounds. Wow, that's a lot of adamantium. That's heavy stuff. Which is awesome because in real life, adamantite, which is believed to be just as strong as adamantium, is a light metal. It is as light as titanium, and you can get a lot of titanium before you make a pound. You can get a titanium brick that thick and about 6 inches long and 6 inches wide, which would only weigh about a quarter of a pound. So, quarter of a pound of titanium on your skeleton, and if you're my height, you're 5'5", a quarter pound of titanium would add about 10 pounds. I currently weigh 135, so another 10 pounds I'd be up 145, and that's not bad. I'm not a very muscular guy, I've got enough, but it's not bulky, all that good stuff. It would bulk you up having to move that much weight around all the time. So, we could do that, and if you happen to find any meteorites with adamantite in it, harvest that adamantite, get your hands on some titanium, melt that stuff together, and we'll get into how to possibly be able to inject that into the skeleton. And I wouldn't say it's actually put into the skeleton, it's more of a coating, which is pretty much what they showed in the 2000 movie, X-Men movie. It was coating the skeleton, not bonding with it. It was just a coating, like spray painting Plastidip over something. It's just a coating. It doesn't really bond to it, but I guess bonding depends on how you look at it, what your point of view of things are. Anyway, some more fun stuff. Pictures. So, what we have here is Wolverine's claws. These are the bone claws. This is the titanium plate and the knuckle covers. Now, like I said, the titanium plate was placed on the back of the hand right about there. And then titanium screws were put into the bones of the metacarpal portion of the hand, which is this bone that runs right through the back of your hand here. That's hurtful. That hurts. It doesn't matter, how long it's been there. When it gets cold, that metal will start to get cold as well, and that goes into the bone, which has nerves and things like that, so you feel it. Just like when you break a finger, or your arm, or, any bone, you feel it because the nerve ending's in there. And we have muscles here. This is the back of the bone. This, I believe, would be more like the back of the finger right here, how it has a nice little arc in it and then comes up to the front. That's how I actually think these would look. But we went off of a picture that I had found online. So his skeleton, as you can see, the claws, there's the back of the elbow. They stop right at the end of the wrist here, which these pieces, judging by the picture that I drew here, if you go by how it looks, actually come up to the back of the wrist. So, I'll set this down. It actually comes up, the claws actually stop right under the wrist bone here. There's a bone here, and there's the bone here. This is your radius, this is your ulna. The claws would stop right at the base of that bone, and then come down to about here, between the radius and ulna. Why? Because the ulna actually comes across this way, and the radius comes across this way. So they cross at the back here, and are opened up at the front here. So the claws would sit in this area. So 9.5 inches of claw sitting in this area would extract from the back of the hand to about there. See my head? That's it. From this point here where it reaches the back of the knuckle covers to about here. That's it. That's not a lot of claw. But it's enough to do what you need it to do. Now, this next picture is based off of the X-ray from the X-Men movie in 2000. I, however, fixed it so it's more realistic. So, here's the claws. Radius, ulna. I didn't cross them at the back here. They're actually separated so you have your full movement of the elbow. However, the elbow is going to be wider so you can see the muscle here and the muscle here. And here's your elbow. I didn't put in the bicep muscle, I'm sorry. But this is the root of the claws. This piece here is used to keep the bones separate. Now, here's the root, the metal plate for the guards, or the knuckle covers, and it separates the wrist. These are the knuckle covers. In between the fingers, these are your metacarpal bones, and these are the metacarpal phalanges. This is where it's actually rooted for this plate. But we moved it back here because we took the claws up, the knuckle covers out, because in the movies they come out between the fingers here. So this is how it would actually look. Just behind the wrist, so you can have full motion, you can move it whichever way. And in here, these would actually only be about 7.5 inches, maybe 8 inches long, using Hugh Jackman's body. Which, that's long enough, that's all you really need. Scientifically proven, you can't exceed the space no matter what you do. And that's all there is to it. You have to use measurements. Now, you got to go check out Nerdist. Go to Twitter, search for Kyle Hill. It'll be at SFI underscore PHE, I believe is what it comes up as. Friend him, check out his Nerdist videos, let him know that these motherfuckers sent you. I'm gonna change the name at some point. I gotta use my laptop to do it, so I gotta get a solid internet connection. I'm gonna change the name. It's gonna become something else, I don't know. I might just change it to what I want to call my company and go from there. But we'll fix that. But for now, just let him know these motherfuckers sent you. And leave questions and comments about his videos. Watch them. Check them all out. They're awesome. Because science is what he uses in it. And go from there. That's all we've got for Wolverine's Claws right now. So, I think we're going to call it a day. It's my day off. I'm going to go play some Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Have a good night, everybody.